I think I mentioned I saw the video, the movie, Deep
Oh, yeah?
of your dad. Yeah, I
You
really
did.
enjoyed that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so glad.
I
Yay.
uh, I got to tell you, it's early, but when he sneaks down that's just it's funny. I don't know if this is on the cast or not, but that is I know Trumpy and those guys are so anti-immigrant, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tell you how important uh, what we stand for as Americans. What someone sneaking off of a ship it's inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so meaningful to me. Thank you for watching and also, sharing that with me. It's such an important thing. And I recently just had a podcast with someone on immigration, and it's always very emotional because it does feel like a very polarizing time, especially for immigrants. And that even that word, it's like become negative. Whereas I really just feel like that's what this country is made up of is immigrants, unless you are actually Native American. But
Well, even then, the argument can be made that they came across into the pre-Clovis civilization. It's just I don't even know. I don't know how far you have to go back. I'm sure the Clovis people were like, really, really, when these other people were coming from. Oh, really? Look at taking our mammoths in our sloth and
well, and just in terms of where we're at today, even in our modern day America, I mean, it's still, a country that is founded upon, and, I feel like the immigrant experience and that American dream was something that was such a beautiful thing, and it has just changed, especially in these last 4 years or so, and it's been very difficult actually. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up.
I'm very I have big I have see I think it's so this will shock you, but if you don't notice, if you picked up on, I'm a white male, and because of that, I have been blessed, and I'm in a certain area of affluence now, where I have a different set of rules. I When I get pulled over by a cop, I yell at them. That's how I get out of tickets, and I blame somebody else. My wife is like, you can't do that. I go, and trust me, if anybody else did what I did, they'd probably get a bullet in the back of their head or choked out.
Yeah.
I know that I have extra. I got up the ladder early. I know that. I did that thing on my YouTube video about systematic racism. And God, by the way, everybody who commented negatively is anonymous. I'm just honest about the fact that because of being male, because of being, and I hate to cut. I was at a workshop one time, and this woman kept pointing at me. And she goes, "You Anglos don't understand what it's like." And so finally, I turned next to me to the priest I was with, and I said, "If she calls me an Anglo one more time, I'm gonna punch her in the face." And he goes, "Why?" I go, "Well, I'm Irish. The most offensive thing you can say to me." And he went, "What do you mean by that?" I go, "Yeah, this is like the most offensive thing." This is okay. I don't want to go with that, but I think we need to. I have two brothers who do not appreciate that they had a little leg up. The other leg up they had. My parents believed that if you went to college, they threw gold bricks at you when you flashed a diploma. So in my house, when you were expected to get a bachelor's degree, and if you had to live at home until you did, you lived at home until you did,
Yeah.
and they take care. And that's not the same as a lot of other people in my own neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, enough. Let's get talking.
Well, I love it. I'm definitely going to attach that in there. But it's always great to see you. And last time we spoke, it was like a little bit crazy in your neighborhood. Obviously, it was already amidst COVID, but you had the gas leak issue that was happening at that time. And then I think your water was off, and it was just like crazy. It was a crazy time.
So
So hopefully things are calmer now.
there was a 6-month period where every time I looked out my window, there would be between 5 and 20 men blowing holes in my sidewalk, street. And that one day we lost our water and had a gas leak. And it was just like, of course, we'd had an earthquake just before that. So it was just like, here we go.
Yeah.
But ideally, unless my dog starts haruffing like he's been a little bit, we should have a fairly quiet time today.
Well, either way, I'm always grateful for your time. So thank you so much. It's something I always look forward to. But on the other hand, I'm always like, oh man, I need to prepare. I've got to get my studying going and get my notes and my highlighters. And so it's always exciting for me too, because I just really enjoy having that push to jump back in, especially right now. Before we jump into the sword and the stone, which of course is what we do, I did want to say that two things. One is we saw that you were in the men's health for your humane burpee, and that's kind of a big deal that more are hearing about all of your wonderful things. So that's very cool. And my
They've done 2 straight articles on my work without even emailing me. They or putting any links at all into my work.
oh
So it kind of, if you don't know who I am, you're and they also cut out the introduction in one of them where I say, hi, I'm Dan John. So all you got is this old 63-year-old puffing and puffing, bitching about life.
I'm
But
pretty sure that anyone reading it knows who you are, though. I mean, in terms of the strength and conditioning world, and if they're perking up men's health, they probably have a pretty good idea.
ideally, yes.
The man that needs no introduction. And then my husband, Oscar, as you know, is a strength trainer, and just wanted you to know your TRX warm up is so awesome, and thank you.
Thank you. Gentle listener, so either on my Instagram account or my YouTube or Dan John University, I have been, listen, a person like myself who grew up with words and pictures, I can read a workout, look at a picture, and figure it out. And no offense to you young people, you young kids and your marijuana cigarettes, and your hippity hop music. You get off my lawn. Old man yells at clouds. I realize I have to demonstrate in real time the workout. Here's a funny thing. One of the comments on the humane burpee is, how long does the workout last? You are literally watching rep by rep by rep of someone doing it. Today I did the 3-minute squat test. And I said at about 2:45, I said, some idiot's going to ask a question, how long is a squat test? 3 minutes. So
That is the world we're in, though.
One of my most popular articles on T Nation Mimi was called the One Lift a Day program. And it became a massive thread after it. And the most common question is, if on front squat day can I add bench press? Well, then that would be 2 lifts. I must have answered that question. In fact, my godson Seth still brings that up almost every time we're at lunch, brunch, whatever. Yeah.
Well, that's just asking people to actually pay attention and process what they're reading or hearing, though. That's kind of a lot for this day and age, unfortunately.
Yes.
We have lowered that standard. And so one more piece of fun things before we jump into the sword and the stone is I was super grateful that you posted the Princess Bride table read for the Wisdoms fundraiser.
Oh.
And it is my all-time favorite movie. And the only sad part was that Oscar had to literally hear me say the whole thing with them as we watched it, because I know every single word of that film. And it was such a cool thing. And so I'm grateful that you posted that as well, because I got
you
to.
let Oscar know we had the same problem in this house with my wife. But wasn't, was his name just dropped
Mandy
out?
Patinkin or Carrie Elwes? Yeah. Mandy Patinkin was no joke.
He should get the Oscar for best Zoom call reading. He was in character.
Oh my goodness. He had the props, but he was so intense and engaging. He was incredible. And I just thought also the Q&A at the end, the amount of empathy that he was trying to promote, and just the message he was giving, it was just such a wonderful thing.
People rip on Manny Patinkin, I guess, because he's very difficult to work with. But I give him a pass forever after watching that, because maybe he's difficult to work with. And by the way, just because someone's difficult, I understand Bill Belichick is difficult to work with because he expects you to do your job. So I sat back and go, okay, maybe he's difficult to work with, but look at the quality of the performance. I was very impressed.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's just that because Carrie always, I read his book, of course, that he wrote about the Princess Bride, and everybody was doing their narration. I actually listened to it, it was audio, but he still, even though he was really clear that Mandy was super competitive, he was super hardcore, like he didn't say, oh, I was already learning fencing ahead of time. He showed up and had already like been practicing for 2 months, but Carrie always still made him sound like he was a joy to work with. And then like he brought his performance up. He never said anything negative about him. And, you know, I'm sure he is really intense and a bit of a perfectionist. After seeing that Zoom call, you can tell
Yeah.
why people might say that. It's just that I think you have to like, you have to get on it. Like, he's taking that lead and he is leading by example. So it's one thing to be difficult and then slack off and just be a diva on set. It's another when you're there and you're bringing your A game every single moment. And he was on a Zoom call and it looked like he had prepared for that for like a month. Like he was so intense and
Oh yeah,
clearly prepared. So I think that I just have so much respect. Yeah.
it was delightful, just delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so super cool. So thank you for sharing that. So I immediately registered as soon as you posted it.
And if you don't mind me following up, the one they did for Parks and Recs, I was actually disappointed with. I donated quite a bit to get into both, and I just felt like the Parks and Recs one, they didn't know what they wanted to be when they grew up.
I didn't catch that one. I didn't catch that one.
And I'm not ripping on the performers.
Right.
I'm making coffee, young listeners. Um, yeah, but enough. That's me. God, look how critical I am.
No, well, you're the Dan John Humane Burpee originator. You have like a standard, but that what you just said about Parks and Rec, I'm sure it was, all in fun, but you could just see the level of preparedness the Princess Bride panel had and just down to the leadership. Like Carrie always put it all together. You could see it was structured. He had this all-star cast and they were super prepared, even though there were tech issues, they all pushed on. And then Rob Reiner, again with the leadership, right? It's such an important thing to have leadership in this world, and it shows in something as simple as a Zoom call. And it was structured, the Q&A was structured. It was so well done. And so yeah, it was such a great thing for the fans. But
Crystal and and Kane, Carol Kane,
mhm.
their conversations about how much they practiced for their. I don't know if their scene lasts more than 2 minutes.
Yeah. And Billy Crystal had the whole set behind him and everything.
The other hat, the other.
Yeah.
Delightful. Okay, let's get to it. What are we supposed to be here?
Well, I think it all relates though, right? Because it's kind of that how serious you take things, how taking your education into account and being prepared for things. I think this is all kind of like gels really nicely. Actually, somehow I'm making Princess Bride and the Sword and Stone work together. I'm gonna do it, everyone, because I love those things both. But we are at the point in the Sword and the Stone, which is very, very much the part where we start really getting into the education. So, and I think it's something that's highly lacking because I think you wrote in one of your education and learning, did you say, often are separated, but they should be kind of, it should be hand in hand, but yet there's education and learning. And so, yeah, we're at the point where Ward is super happy because he brings Merlin home and he realizes he was on a quest. And then we start off going down that journey of that education part.
If you don't mind, I will pull up my notes.
Please do.
That section, because there's a few things in that section that are worth reviewing. But
absolutely.
Let us begin.
Okay, yeah. And so where we actually did leave off was picking up where Wart comes home and then Sir Ector is asking for testimonials and he's asking to show proof that Merlin is a tutor and that he knows what he's doing. And I thought this was so delightful because it was just, he made a tree and he was like, oh, they use mirrors or whatever and snow. And it was such a delightful way and lighthearted way of showing that scene. Yet it kind of just shows how people are constantly like always wanting verification, but yet they don't even listen for the answer. Cause I mean, he's just like doing magic. And I just thought the symbolism there was really fun, but also kind of had, of course, like everything else in this book, a really cool, deeper meaning.
I'm not reading out loud. I'm just coming back to the master of Trinity talking about he had never met the man. That was in his letter of recommendation.
Yes.
He admitted never having met the man. I just find that's very. I always find that as a very funny line. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, in my work, I realize, in the first chapter, the two of them keep trying to break out the word uter,
Mm-hmm.
the Latin word utor, which means utility. And I've always thought that there was a play on words there with tutor and uter. It just sets up the story. I just thought that was just brilliant. The more I get through this book by White, the more and more respect I have for him as an author, and the more and more convinced that there's a few books from the last century. I would say Dune will be around, I think, in the future, because Star Wars, if you read Dune and you just think Star Wars, you start to pick up Tatooine and Dune are the same place.
A lot of sand.
A lot of sand. I kind of think the original Godfather, the first one maybe,
Mm-hmm.
I really think The Road is terrible. It can't be the story. By the way, the book is fantastic, folks. Hard to read. But I think The Sword in the Stone might be one of those that gets rediscovered in history. Sadly, the 1958 version is what most people read. I picked up another copy of one I've had before. Sadly, I loaned out. It's the one with Dennis Nolan's great artwork.
Mm-hmm. That's the one I have.
And that's the best one, because this one has him they don't fight a griffin. They fight the anthropogia, these terrible cannibals, the Scipios and all these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to retype that whole section for Wandering Waits down the line. I only probably have another year left of it, at most. I'm at the Beast Galapagos, the giant Galapagos episode, and then we have Badger after that, and then the sword gets pulled out of the stone. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
It's been really amazing. I've really been enjoying it, and as much as I enjoy seeing some of the strength training tips and whatnot, I really just scroll down and get to the sword in the stone personally. And but it has been really nice to be able to see how dedicated you are to keeping up with your Wandering Weights, and it's such an intense thing. You don't just write like a 3-line thing. It's so well thought out, and you share so much, and super insightful. So I do appreciate having those. But again, I love scrolling down to get to my sword in the stone tidbits.
The most feedback I've gotten is the one I did on superfoods about maybe 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
where I had the list of
Mm-hmm.
the most allergic or least tolerable and the superfoods. If I said dozens of emails, I don't think I'm exaggerating, people just liking that. I don't know if the one has come out yet about with my mother's soup recipe. I'm always I turn that stuff in early, so I'm never
Right.
I'm already working on next week, so that'll be a week and a day from now as we do this. So I'm always kind of lost in the time.
We're all lost in the time zone right now, though. It's completely crazy. Yes.
TH1.
Yeah. So of course, after Merlin proves his worth to the great Sir Ector and such, and in a very fun way, I thought it was interesting how the end of the chapter ends with kind of Kay getting a little bit snooty, but then Merlin showed him kindness. And I, being kind of a little bit of a strict kung fu teacher, I'm like, I can't believe he gave him a knife. Or was it a knife?
Listen to the line he says. Let me see if I can pull that up quickly. Okay?
He's when what Merlin says or what Kay says.
I have found
because Kay says. Kay says, I don't think much of it as a quest, said Kay. He only went after the hawk after all, and got the hawk. Master Kay, said Hob reprovingly. Oh, well, said Kay, I bet the old man caught it for him. Kay, said Merlin, suddenly terrible, thou wast ever a proud and ill-tongued speaker, and a misfortunate one. Thy sorrow will come from thine own mouth.
So stop right there. Suddenly terrible. So, what I want you to think about is that you begin to forget in the story that Merlin is a powerful wizard, and I like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings a lot, but you really have to watch the extended versions. And I mean, it's going to take you. The extended version that I have is probably 1,000,000 hours long, but there are scenes where Gandalf all of a sudden rises up and he is a powerful wizard. He's not just this nice little friend of hobbits who does fireworks. And in Dumbledore, now of course, Tolkien and White, Tolkien invited White to be part of their group, and White had no interest in it. We know for sure that J.K. Rowling deeply was impacted by The Sword and the Stone. She said that to Neil Gaiman, the other fantasy writer.
Mm-hmm.
Gaiman said back, "I thought we're all just stealing from T.H. White."
Right, Neil Gaiman. Mm-hmm.
Gaiman.
Yep.
Dumbledore is considered just a nice old dude most of the time until he gets into, I think it's the battle against Voldemort in the Ministry, when suddenly we realize what a badass he is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Suddenly terrible. I love that.
Yeah.
Suddenly terrible. It's a great little line. And then, of course, what a fine way to put a young, proud young boy in line. It's your mouth that's going to get you in trouble, son. I've said that actually as a teacher many times. It is a standard teaching line for someone like me. Your mouth's going to write checks that your body can't cash. So it's a delightful little moment, and he makes him a beautiful little knife, or he gives him a beautiful little knife.
Yes, he does.
And here's the thing: I've read
hunting knife.
Yeah, I've read some criticisms of the Sword and the Stone. A fun place to go to read really bad criticism, a place called Amazon, where stupid people comment. And one person said and God bless them, I know they read the entire book, is they don't understand Sir Kay. But it's like, well, have you ever been around an only child of rich people? And I mean that. I mean, gentle listeners, if you're an only child of a rich family, send the emails to Mimi. But there's this idea that there are times where certain behaviors are unchecked. They're not bad people. They've never been checked before. Mm-hmm. I remember teaching this young boy who was a 9th grader, and he had been homeschooled his entire life. And the parents, they were helicopter parents, and they came to school and they wanted to meet with every teacher about what they could do for little Bobby. And I said, well, it's great that you homeschooled him, and I'll do what I can to help in the classroom. But his first day, when he goes in the cafeteria to eat lunch, he doesn't have a skill set to deal with 800 adolescents, basically unsupervised, in a cafeteria. And good luck on that.
Yes, it's true. As an educator as well, you see the kids that have no preparedness in that socialization and being able to interact and communicate, and it's not arming your kid with the tools that they are going to need, because they're not always going to be in your little home, in your special safe haven. And so it's definitely, it's definitely a good lesson to learn as early as possible in life.
It's a tough one. And that's why I'm such a big fan of travel.
Mm-hmm.
When I was it's called Upper Egypt. It's the Lower Nile. And
mm-hmm.
I think I've mentioned to you before, I was walking down the street and I had a whole pack of little kids following me. And I asked my friend Ramadan, what's going on? Because they'd run up and they would touch me and they go, they've never seen someone white before. And every single kid had massive smiles on their face constantly. Many of them, certainly my grandchildren have more stuff than them, but I don't see a smile on my grandchildren's faces constantly. So just a side issue. I don't know why I mentioned it, but.
Oh, no. I think that it's very relevant, and it's something that I've also noticed, because a lot of people like to equate comfort and materialistic things with happiness. And we as a country right now are proving that that is not the case. And when you see a lot, my mom is from Jamaica, my dad is from China. There are a lot of third world type areas I've been to, and you see people who are genuinely happy and they have no shoes, and it is an interesting thing to witness. And I'm fortunate that my parents exposed me to travel very early on, because it does make you come home, and at least for a week or so as a young, a comfortable American child, appreciate things a little bit more, right? And I think that's an important thing to be exposed to. And it does play into even our discussion here, because it's all about education, right? And it's all about learning and taking those experiences, in which we are so fortunate we get to follow Wart along on some really cool experiences coming up as he jumps in with Merlin. Of course, we get to hear a lot about the Castle of the Forest Sauvage in this next chapter 5.
Yeah, and I think I say, oh, pardon me, I just lost. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. Wait, got it. Stop touching buttons. I think I say in my notes somewhere, and I'm sorry to do this to you, gentle listener, but I think, in my opinion, if there was only one chapter in the entire book that you should read, it'd be 5. I think I say that in my notes.
Yes, you do mention you really enjoy 5, and I have it right here, but it's also the Homecoming.
Oh, well, you're still.
That was in 4, right? So we didn't talk about the Homecoming, but we're headed into 5. So
okay. One of my favorite things about the Homecoming is the series of sentences by Wart. Let me get it to you. It's the look. I call it the look.
Mm-hmm.
The excitement is I'll just read what I have in my notes. Look what I have brought. Look, I've been on a quest. I was shot at with 3 arrows. The owl is called Archimedes. I saw King Pellinor. This is my tutor, Merlin. Merlin made the plates wash up. Ha, look, we have Cully. I think T.H. White completely nailed excited little boy right there. Where you sit down, I've seen it with my grandson, Danny. I've actually seen it with my own daughter, so maybe it's not a gender thing, where someone does something, they see you, and in a series of 5 to 20 sentences, give you 2 months. And the way White writes the excitement there, I just think is beautiful. Look, 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 look. I think it's delightful.
Yeah, it does capture that puerile nature, and it's so pure and innocent and true excitement, because as we know, as his path goes on and on and on, I'm not sure he is that happy after he pulls the sword. He actually kind of has this kind of a bit of it's a happy moment, but he's not as happy as he is in this moment. And you pointed that out in your notes as well.
You make an amazing point there. Because once he pulls the sword of the stone, his life just, he's in a marriage with infidelity, but he loves Lancelot, obviously loves Guinevere. In fact, in one of my early articles, I talk about that love triangle, and of course during the time there's this concept called courtly love. It was your job to be in love with your lord's wife, but it was a separate love,
Mm-hmm. Like a reverence.
Yeah. In fact, Tristan and Isolde, depending on how you say the two names, Tristan steals Isolde. They drink that love potion, and they look at each other, and because Isolde was supposed to marry King Mark, as I recall, who was a beat up, ugly old dude. And they get thirsty on the rowboat when the maid falls asleep, the handmaid, and they drink whatever they find. Of course, it's a love potion for Isolde, so she can put up with King Mark. Well, they fall in love instantly, and when she wakes up, and you two have done it. And the tradition is that Tristan and Isolde slept together with Tristan's sword between them, because they never consummated their love. They were madly in love with each other, but not sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, and so my point is, we're talking about a man whose life all he wanted to be was a knight, and it's later on in the story. Wart tells us, I just want to go around helping people. And Wart says, Merlin says, what if they won't want to be helped? Well, I could ask. And the second he pulls the sword out of the stone and people start bowing to him, as well prepared as he is, he's not prepared for the life he's about to lead, which is going to be horrible. It starts off dealing with the Orkney clan. They're going to kill Pellinor. His wife's going to cheat on him. His son, whose son, who is his nephew, Mordred, is going to go out of his way to destroy the entire realm. And he gets saved ultimately by Lancelot. I mean, it's a terribly sad story. Well, isn't that happy? Okay.
Well, that was one of the things, is I have such a fondness for this. And then I went on to read the other ones and I was just unbelievably depressed. It was horrible. But the thing is, knowing that information though, these rereads are more entertaining, is the wrong word, and it's so much more enlightening, because now I really appreciate how happy he is in this moment, knowing what comes later, right? And so that's why the art of the reread, and as we talk about all the time, is such an important thing when it's a good book, of course. And I would love you to expand a little, because I enjoyed what you wrote about that. You can't go home again. Like, this is you can't kind of repeat that. Like, this only happens once. You can't cross the same river twice. Like,
well, there's a phrase. It's called forgive and forget, and I think there's a level of wisdom in the phrase forgive and forget that most people miss. And if you don't mind, I'm riffing on what you just said. If you found, and since I'm on the Lancelot thing, if you find out that there has been infidelity, or someone, your girlfriend loses her virginity to another guy, you can't. That's a good example right there.
It's clear.
This idea of forgiving and forgetting is important, but like you said, you can't cross the river twice. Yeah. And I really think that's a major kind of theme in the later books. Sorry, the weight of what I just said just kind of pounded me down. So keep talking for a minute. I'll catch back.
Of course. But I always find it fascinating to be able to kind of read the book, kind of think of my own thoughts. And then when I read your notes, I get so much more depth out of it. And so just that whole thing of the homecoming, you can't have that twice. Like, you can't do this thing first 2 times. It really resonated. And it's so amazing. I think you did such a great job of, and even in strength training, it's the same thing. You take something that is a very simple concept that we should just get, and it should make complete sense, but you're able to articulate it in a way that it makes more sense. Like, and so I always appreciate that. But you did also talk about, like, as we move forward, chapter 5, I have it here as if you were to just print just one chapter, this would be the one, because there's an overview of the castle grounds. We get to meet Dog Boy and the kennels. Merlin and Wart begin his education by becoming a fish, and Wart learns to swim like a fish, and Merlin doctors an ill fish, and Wart learns about power from a pike.
And he's in grave danger.
Yes.
Yes. And this will be a theme that goes through the whole book to our listeners. Merlin puts young King Arthur Wart in the very face of danger over and over and over. I'm in the chapter on Galapagos. Wart's in danger. The pike is ready to eat Wart as a fish. When they, depending on who they fight, depending on which edition you have, but the Arthropagi, or whatever they're called, the Weirens and the Griffins, they're in the Madame Mim story. Madame Mim keeps pinching Wart to see if he's fat enough to cook. This is not. These are not the fairy. These are These are the Grimm's fairy tales. Not the nice one, what my friend called the Disney chocolate eclair factory. These are scary moments. And what's beautiful about chapter 5, and if you just pulled chapter 5 out and read it, you would get the bulk of why I love the book so much. For example, Merlin, when Wart first starts to swim, he swims with his fins, and he says, you got to put your back into it. Of course, that's weightlifting 101. You got to lift with the whole system. And the silly little thing with the lob worms and with the woman who's always ill. It's just a fun little story. Another thing that you might miss that ties us right into Harry Potter and the very first Harry Potter book is when Merlin talks to Neptune, everything's in reverse. The language is in reverse. And that brings us to the first Harry Potter book, The Mirror of Erised, which is the mirror of desire. And I'm not a huge fan of the first 2 Harry Potter movies, but that scene and it's different from the book, but that scene with Richard Harris as Dumbledore, where he talks about the happiest man in the world could look in the mirror and just see himself. Of course, in the book, Harry says to Dumbledore, what do you see? Oh, I see myself holding socks. I never have enough socks. Of course, we find out in the 7th book that that's not true at all. So I always found that I might be the only person who would pick up on that, but it was really clear to me that leap to the mirror of Erised. I don't know if I mention it in my writings, but when I come back and do this again in its totality, I'll make sure I mention it that second time.
Okay. Yeah. So picking up on a few of the things that you mentioned, I really enjoyed the actual quote itself in terms of education and learning. And then I wanted to ask you something about the dog boy, but where is it now? So, yes, education is experience, and the essence of experience is self-reliance. And I think that's such a great quote and such a relevant one for right now.
Where are you right now?
This is chapter 5, and he just is about to become the fish. So he already did the saying his thing backwards, which is interesting. In the audiobook, they don't say it backwards. They actually say it as it would be, but when you read it, obviously it looks backwards. It looks like gibberish. So right after he does the spell, like a couple paragraphs later, he's asked Merlin, Wart says, oh, Merlin, come with me as well. And he's like, all right, just this once, but in the future, you will have to go by yourself.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's why I type it both times, which took a lot of work. You're welcome. Yes. Education is experience, and the essence of experience is self-reliance. Of course, there was that great book. Was it Emerson wrote Self-Reliance? But yeah, self-reliance, personally, and it gets us back to our conversation about helicopter parents not long ago, being able to just, go into the situation by yourself, adapt. It reminds me, for self-reliance, I really, I'm gonna say it's not fair to my story, but my personal history. But the first time I was truly alone as a person was when I went to Utah State. I knew one person in the state of Utah, but only by a phone call, and his name was Coach Ralph Mon. And so, here I am, 43 years later, and everyone jokes because I know everybody. But it was the only time in my life where I had to actually make friends. I didn't just go to school with people. I didn't just play a sport with them. I didn't just grow up next door to them. I had to actively go out and make discernments about people I met, and learn their name and all that kind of thing. I look back on that time and I can see why I hold it so fondly. Is because sometimes going out in the world by yourself is difficult. You know, I think about your father's story, watching the video. Gentle listener, we were talking about Mimi's dad earlier, about, and it's great. It's my favorite scene in whatever you want to
A
documentary.
documentary. Yeah.
It's so, so many things nowadays. Is
Yes.
when he climbed, he jumped off of a ship to sneak into America, basically.
Hmm.
And I mean, the level of bravery on that, and the level of discomfort, but the level of self-reliance, and here you are, simply not even you're the child, a generation, and you look behind you and all the stuff on those walls, and look at what we're doing right now, and that young man's decision to leap led to all of this,
Hmm.
and you, it's a hard thing to teach people to, you got to let your kids fail. I used to joke, for years, I used to go to every science fair. You know what science fairs are?
Yes.
That's part of kids going to high school. They don't have to do goddamn science fair again.
I had to have the the trifold things.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
had to, yeah, yeah.
I got you. And you would walk up to one, and it was clear that the parents had done the entire thing. It was obvious. Here's my lab experiment. Here's me with my father. He's a doctor, and here we are. We're taking the patient's blood. Son, I know you didn't. You're 9 years old. You did not take the patient's blood. I'll tell you one thing, if I'd have been the patient, I'd have punched somebody in the mouth, starting with you. What lessons? I mean, you're giving the kid a leg up, so but when you do your kids' homework. The other day, of course, my grandchildren have been here a lot lately, and it's been wonderful. I was helping Josephine. Josephine's in the first grade read, and she reads like a first grader. I have multiple degrees. I'm a Fulbright scholar, and listening to her phrase out the, at, and the bird. It's a bird, But I have to sit back, bite my lower lip as tight as I can, and let her fight through it. Because if I don't, she's going to have to learn the lesson the next day, when it's actually a little bit harder, and then the next day. And but Merlin makes a smart choice in this one. He goes with him, and it's kind of interesting because Merlin is tutoring him on certain things. He's tutoring him on how to swim. He's showing them, how to work with people. Obviously, the sick fish, it was psychosomatic. And then he puts him in front of probably the most dangerous moment of the book. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dangerous moments, but where he meets the pike or the loose, depending where he lived. But he's there, and Wart uses his back and as powerfully as he can, and the next moment, they're both huffing and puffing, out of breath, just outside the water.
Yes.
Yes. So even with him walking with him, Merlin still it's up to Wart to save himself.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the lesson for parenting and teaching. Is you put them in a situation, you're there for them, and then you let them fail. One of the hardest things about being a track and field coach, especially at the high school level, is how often the parent struggles with watching their child publicly fail. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I want boys to wrestle in high school. I think there's great value. Every single person in the audience knows that little boy from Ogden High School pinned your ass. Grandma knows you lost. You didn't get a star on your science fair project. You didn't get your choices are excellent and very good. No, you got pinned. And in track, if you don't prepare yourself and you run the 1 mile and you get lapped in 4 laps, everybody in the place knows you aren't necessarily a world-class athlete. When you take last place in the 100 meters, you're not a sprinter. And there's value to that. My job as the head coach is to say to you honestly and candidly, listen, your talents are not in the sprints. but you might, with training, make a really good X, Y, or Z.
Hmm.
And it's a great lesson for life. And I tell you, Mimi, you want that lesson as early as you can.
Absolutely.
The nice part is, and here's my follow up to that. The very first, whatever you want to call these transformations, Wart learns the lesson right away.
Hmm.
You can die. Of course, the very next time now he's going to go with the Hawks. He almost taken out then. He almost gets taken out in the big battle with the arrows. He almost gets taken out with a giant. So basically, got a story. A lot of people almost getting.
Yes, there's a lot of close calls for him, but I like you really enjoyed this chapter, and particularly because of that lesson. I see it all the time. You're right. The valuable lesson of learning that failure is a part of it, because no matter what, we're all going to fail at something at some point. It's how you deal with that failure that is so incredibly important. And I have kids as young as 3 who come to train at my school. And I have noticed in this decade of generation versus previous and all older, as we get older, say, oh, back in my day, blah blah blah, and it makes you feel, like you're aging. But it is really true. I mean, I see that if kids can't get something immediately, they shut down or they cry or they have a fit, and I'm like, man, like I I definitely know that I grew up very fortunate because my father jumped off that ship and made that choice to go to a new land and do these things. My mother, the same thing. So they gave me comforts, but neither of them were really like in the US education system. So I did have to do my own science fair project, which was never very good and could always tell that it was not done by a parent. But it just, it does help make you stronger for later on in life. People ask, oh, how did you do a documentary, or how did you do this? Because of self-reliance, because you learn that you have to get it done. And I see a lot of kids that just, if they fail, like they want to quit. And it's very scary, actually, that parents have such a hard time with that. So I always think that there should be like a parent school before parents become parents, and get like this basic kind of, hey, here's how to deal with XYZ, because is detrimental to the way these kids come out. I hear college kids have their parents go with them to interviews for their first job and crazy things like this. And I'm going, what? And I think this is such a relevant quote. It's such a relevant chapter, and the lessons in it are super important. Like, you need to learn to swim before you can dart. All of that is so easily interpreted to anything that we do. But I'm 100% with you there. These valuable lessons are
It would be, when I was teaching a press out of San Francisco, I love these textbooks. Now, the other faculty members didn't, but then I look back and maybe they couldn't handle this, but they were just compilations. Like there was a little bit of the Epic of Gilgamesh, there was a little bit of Genesis, there was a little, and it was a little bit of the Iliad, a little bit of the Odyssey, and there were these books, and they were very inexpensive because they didn't have to pay the authors anything because they're all dead, which is not a bad idea. The Council of Trent, they had certain things. This agreement with Metternich, they had a few things, and then I would have the students read them, and then we would talk. And I think it'd be brilliant to have a book like that had chapter 5, and there's probably a chapter of The Godfather or Dune that would work as well too. Mm-hmm. Just these one-off books, because, and then if someone goes, by God, I like what I just read, read the whole book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It would be nice. I mean, I feel often that the books we get assigned in school, I don't know who makes these decisions, but I think it would also help kids be more engaged if they read something that they're interested in as well. Like there are so many amazing books. I'm sure we can find a lot of them that hit up several different, different avenues, and that kind of resonates for people, because I feel like there's that disengagement for a lot of the youth.
Principal at a school, and they have I can't remember, it's 20 minutes or half hour. It's called free reading, and the whole school stops for 20 minutes a day, and you could read whatever you feel like. And the research on this, you read what you like, is really quite stunning, really helpful for making people lifelong readers. I'm sitting here in my office right now, and I just finished this book by James Ponti, called City Spies. It's a young adult crime novel. And people say, why do you read young adult stuff? And it's like, well, because I think the best literature in the last 10 years has been young adult. You know, Divergent, Hunger Games, City Spies. Oh, there's that book where the paintings come to life at night. I just think it's a great genre to read. And people say,
Yeah, I
well,
love YA.
yeah, why are you not reading, you know? Well, I did, but I like this. So let's continue. Let's get back to Sword in the Stone. Sorry about that.
Yes, no. This is, like I said, it's all very valuable, and it all relates. So before we start to wrap up, of course, you know, the education stuff is super important. I didn't want to not address the dog boy, and wanted to make sure we talked about him because I just love that it's someone that finally looks up to Wart, or that treats him in the way Wart treats pretty much everybody else that he comes across. And so that he gets a little bit of that other side of the relationship. And I find that, I guess, you know, my sister she's special. She has special needs. She's got cerebral palsy. She was like, as you know, you watch the movie. And so I always feel kind of a little bit of a protector of those who don't fit into the mold of society, or who aren't quote unquote like everybody else. And I hate bullies. And I feel like we're in a world and a country where bullies are getting the say, and they're getting a voice. And like you said, anybody can go on Amazon and just say whatever they want. And they're empowered because they can hide behind their screens, and they're empowered because people are telling them it's okay to be racist. All of these things upset me. And so I felt like the dog boy character was kind of an important one to touch on today as well.
Well, the thing is, for the listener, so what White does is he describes, first he talks about going to the Castle Sauvage in 2020. And they've probably put up some barricades, and if you stand back, you can see where things were. And then he fills it in to the period of time, and he takes us on a journey, and then we slide downstairs to the kennels, right? Inside the kennel is Dog Boy, and Dog Boy and Wart are together, right? And Wart is extremely fond of Dog Boy, and he's amazed at how Dog Boy can talk to the dogs, instantly know what's bothering them, whether it's like a thistle in their ear or a thorn in their paw. And yes, he's had his nose bitten off by Watt. Yes, he had it. But that doesn't matter to Wart. And I think two things come off here. One is other knowledge. And I learned a while ago, and I can't tell you that, like, I am amazed. My neighbor here next door, just to the north of me, he can look at any car in the world, tell you what's wrong. He works at he's a mechanic, and fix it. I don't have any of those skills. When I was spending time down in Upper Egypt, I went, and this guy was making a boat. And what he had done is he had stolen a garbage can from the hotel I was staying at. And I know that because the name of the hotel was on the garbage can. And he stole pieces of asphalt from the street, and he was melting the asphalt and then twisting goat hair into these ropes, dipping it into the asphalt, and then tapping it with his hammer between the pieces of wood to make the boat waterproof. Wow. Now, he was making a boat with a bucket he stole from the hotel, from asphalt he stole from the road, and I looked at him. Mimi, I tell you, if I spent 5 hours there, in fact, Will, the guy I was with, he came over to check in on me. He goes, what are you doing? And at the time, I was drinking tea with all the guy's friends. I'm drinking tea, watching this guy make a boat. and what I think Wart is reminding us of right here is that some people have amazing skills, but they're not the skills of making money. And there has to be more than that. Maybe next time when it's a little bit farther away emotionally for me, I'd like to discuss bullying, and especially with people who have a history of a speech impediment. So I grew up with a pretty good sized speech impediment. In fact, my cousin Bill, when he found out what he did for a living, Bill said to Richard, Danny can speak. And this is what I do for a living now because I overcame a speech impediment.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you make someone with a speech impediment get untracked is you bully them, you interrupt them, you throw stuff at them. And in the recent weeks, we saw this happen. And I tell you, it hit me. It hit little Danny John. It hit 7-year-old Danny John.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said about bullies. But my father taught me a good lesson when I was young, is the way you deal with a bully is you beat the bully up. And one day, someone made fun of me for my little issue with speech. And I began to hit this person on the face. Fortunately, it was in front of my house. And my dad ran out and pulled me off this kid. And then I explained the situation. And my dad went, yeah, that's on me. But the way you stop the bully, guys like me need to beat the bully up. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to find in this story, in The Sword and the Stone, is that a lot of the bullies get their due. Sadly, in the whole arc of the story, the bully wins, but that's not for today.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, the dog. It's funny because he's such a he is an integral part of the book, but it's not like one of the main characters. But it's someone I'm super fond of, and of course, you wrote a lot about it in your notes and everything as well. So we'll definitely revisit that and revisit bullying. But
yeah, Dog Boy's going to come back in probably the most. If you use chiasmic structure, this part with Robin Wood, Dog Boy and Watt will be in the keys to that part of the story. They're the ones we have to go save. And so Dog Boy shows up. And interesting, Dog Boy has his nose bitten off by Watt. Watt and Dog Boy become close friends later. And there's an interesting little side thing. Read the book.
Yes. So, but as always, we're pretty much wrapping up on time. Our time goes so quickly here, but I think that this is probably a good stopping point anyway. We're pretty much through kind of the meat of chapter 5, and I think it's funny because you mentioned also earlier how like this is really one of the most perilous moments, and it's not that Disney cartoon version of it because it really makes you feel like, oh no, you almost got bitten, but the way it's written is a lot more perilous, and you do kind of feel your heart pumping as he finally takes that last ounce of energy and throws us back in, and they jump out of the moat. Is it a moat they're in, or the
Yeah, they're in the moat.
They're in the moat, right? So he's finally out, and then you feel kind of that sense of relief. But I'm with you because it's also the first time he's in this type of peril. Like even though he got lost in the woods, he stumbled on Merlin's cabin. This is like the first big time, and I think that's why it's also a lot more impressional. But we'll leave it at there today. And I thank you for talking with me about education and self-reliance. I think that's a big piece of the puzzle that's missing in a lot of the world of thought right now. And I think it's always a great thing to hear it from you and the way that you explain things. So I always appreciate that.
And gentle listener, listen to what Pike says about power, and then think about what your relationship is to power, and also what he says about love. Love is a trick played on us by evolution. And and by the way, a person like me, I believe, to quote many songs, love is the answer. So there you go.
Perfect. Well, Dan, thank you so much for having a conversation. I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Soon.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.